Michael, what was your overwhelming thought watching playoff football on Sunday?
I didn't have anybody to really root for. I had more interest in the Washington team, obviously living here all my life and having covered that franchise for a while under much different circumstances. And that was fascinating. It's also obviously fascinating to live here and watch Jaden Daniels knowing, he's going to be compared, he and Caleb, for their whole careers, will be compared to each other depending on the outcomes and the week-to-week goings-on of their lives and careers. That could go for 15 years. So that's fascinating. And so I was looking at it in a sort of clinical way. I didn't have a rooting interest. I think I told you guys last week, I didn't believe that Buffalo could beat the Chiefs in Kansas City. I didn't. And it seems like all the ex-players on television, on all networks, were picking Buffalo. I didn't really understand that. And that reminds me that Buffalo goes through of sort of the Knicks running up against Michael Jordan, the Bulls, with, Patrick Mahomes being Jordan now. And there's lots of players who, as the great Charles Barkley, our dear friend, once said, we were born at the wrong time. Because Josh and others have to go up against Patrick Mahomes, and they don't fare well. And that includes Lamar Jackson and all kinds of people. So I was looking at it, from that standpoint, obviously fascinated and wondering, if the Bears can have one of those topsy-turvy seasons where they turn it around like Washington just did in one season with people at the helm that should be there. So, there's a lot of different points, but it was a fairly unemotional weekend for me, except to marvel at the Chiefs and what they do.
Michael, with the comparison of Michael and Mahomes, even though Mahomes has won it sooner because he had Michael had greatness individually right away. He was outstanding, but it took him 7 years to break through. Mahomes, it was basically instantaneous that he was a championship contender. What are the parallels that you see with the way they're able to win and just outlast other teams as well?
Well, they just do whatever it is necessary. There's no formula. And people, particularly analysts, want to make these things, here's what you have to do, and here's who has to. You don't have to do anything. You have to win the damn game. And so we don't know what that. Maybe it's Chris Jones who wins the game this week. Maybe it's, Harrison Butker. Maybe it's Mahomes always does something. He always does something somewhere between routine and amazing. And he makes the amazing look routine. And that's what they do. And Andy Reid always seems to be in perfect sync with his players, particularly his offensive players. And Mahomes can take people that, are supposed to be great and win with them, or guys leave and they're replaced by folks and he wins with them. And it just, they're a great team. And could I see Philadelphia beating them? Yeah. Yeah, you got Saquon Barkley. You can win a game. It's not a series. It's a game. But am I going to the betting window on the Chiefs losing? I'm not. No.
Mike, are you suffering in any way, shape, or form from any type of Chiefs fatigue? It seems like they've inspired some people that, are like, I don't like this team any longer. I love watching this
trifling
team.
Behavior. That's just people get lazy and stupid because they don't know what to think, they don't know what to say. And so they say that because they're not really sports fans. They're not knowledgeable enough. And so they say stupid stuff, and I've heard a lot of it, and I dismiss it. And somebody did that on a telecast this weekend. I wasn't sure who it was. Who did that game? Maybe it was Romo. It's like, what are you talking about? You've got fatigue. This is fatigue comes maybe if you're the Patriots and it becomes the better part of 15 years or 20 years. Or, but are we there with the Chiefs? I mean, seriously? Are our attention spans that short? Are we that trifling? We have to create reasons to dislike somebody. I tune those people out. I have no time for them.
Wait, so Tom Thayer's coming on in an hour from now, and we had a text chain going earlier where he was asking us, and first he was saying, Jim Kelly has done more right now than Josh Allen. And he went to 4 Super Bowls and lost. Josh Allen hasn't been to a Super Bowl yet. So, but I do believe when it's all said and done, Josh Allen will be viewed as the better historical quarterback. That's not what I want to ask you, though.
Why? Why?
Because I just believe he's better at football. I believe that he will ultimately be. Now, it's a different game. So it's so hard to compare numbers.
Right.
But I believe the way he plays the sport and
I think he's got a better supporting.
And the multi-dimensional ways in which he could slay you with his legs, too. He is such a beast.
I agree with all that, Silly, but he's got to win. Otherwise, he's Dan Marino.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Right. I was going to ask you then, because Thayer and I are going to have a bet coming up. Because he believes that Thayer believes he won't win, and he will be Barkley. He will be Marino. And I'm going to have a lifetime bet with him that I believe Lamar's going to break through one time. I also believe that Josh Allen, because just like John Elway, I think, is a good example.
But Elway was different.
Well, what do you mean? How is he different?
No.
How's he different?
Because Elway may be the GOAT. Josh Allen's not the GOAT. Elway at one point could have been the GOAT. Elway got to 3 Super Bowls by himself with no Pro Bowl teammates. No.
I mean, come on now. He had the MVP with him on one of those Super Bowl champion. Come on. He is a Hall of Fame running back.
That's at the end, Sylvie. The first
when
3,
he won the Super
he
Bowls.
had no Pro Bowl teammates. He got to the Super Bowl 3 times as a one-man band. Now, I did compare Josh Allen to John Elway.
Their skill sets are similar.
No.
You don't think that Josh
Allen... Their skill
Allen...
sets are very similar.
Very similar.
Very similar. Yes. I just said this on PTI a couple of days ago. Yes, I agree with that part of it. But the notion that somebody has to win... Did Patrick Ewing win? Did Charles win?
No.
Did Stockton and Malone win?
Doesn't it
Did
have
Reggie
to?
Miller
I believe
win?
he will. I believe they will.
Okay.
And I believe football is different where you could just... You could physically get beaten up more so than in basketball.
Now, all that may be true, but if you have a transcendent player, if their careers aren't over yet, and this is a fun discussion and a fun bet, this is great stuff. But I was there for Jim Kelly. I was there all 4 of those years covering the NFL then. I was at those games.
When you say, Mike,
I know how
let
great
me
they were,
interject
and
this.
I know what the disappointment of each year did to the team the subsequent year, which, again, people don't take into account with analytics. Just the toll it takes on the spirit of great players. I know Thurman Thomas. I know Bruce Smith. I got to know Andre Reed. These guys are great. These guys are Hall of Famers.
Well,
they're among the greatest players of all time at their positions, and they didn't break through. They couldn't.
I was just going to say, too, like, if you analyze, if you're doing the Jim Kelly, Josh Allen analysis, you would agree, wouldn't you, that to this point, Jim Kelly had a better supporting cast than what Josh Allen has had. When you factor who was on both sides of the football.
Yes, one of the great supporting casts of all time.
Yeah.
And they lost by increasing amounts each year. And by the way, not the same team. What was it, Dallas, the Giants? Was it Dallas twice?
Well, the Redskins. They lost to the Redskins.
Was one of them. If after the first year or a year where they lost the AFC title game and then a Super Bowl, you'd say, oh, they're going to break through. Jim Kelly's going to break through. Yeah, well, okay.
How about Bill Polian was their vice president of administration and general manager. Marv Levy was their head coach. Like, that was
It was just great.
Yeah, that was. And Jim Kelly had quite a group around him in that home.
Oh my God, the offensive line, the backup quarterback was Frank Reich.
Yeah.
And he brought them back against Houston.
Yes. So I don't know that Lamar Jackson's going to win one. I don't know that.
It is interesting.
How would you bet, Waddle, if you had to get in on the action?
I think the odds would tell you no because it's so hard to win. Really, how many guys have won Super Bowls?
Right. And by the way, other people are coming that we don't know.
Well, and I think also, look, I think Josh Allen is fabulous. He's also carrying probably, a $50 million, price tag. It's going to be hard going forward with him. My money would say no. But I wouldn't be shocked in the slightest if they.
Well, here's
they
the other
did.
thing. Here's the other thing. You got the Chargers, who are going to be sort of fortified for even at least a mini run. You do have Cincinnati, which
Sure.
they
Burrow's
seem a little
great.
star-crossed, but okay, they got a quarterback who may be as talented as anybody, including Mahomes. You got people you can't see in the weeds. If you're in the NBA and you say, well, it's got to be Oklahoma City, like I've said, and all of a sudden you look up and the Houston Rockets are down the street, and they got like 8 dudes and a posse of people, you go, wait a minute. I mean, suppose the window for all these things is not as wide as you think it is.
I think
So
Josh
the
Allen
Boston
has the
Celtics,
ability
they just
to
have
win.
to repeat, right? What's that?
I said I think Josh Allen definitely is a Super Bowl winning caliber player, but just the numbers would tell you that getting there and winning it would probably work against
It's
him.
hard, but I also look at the last era of great quarterbacks, and I look at Manning, and I look at Drew Brees, and even with Tom Brady, who was dynastic, when Tom Brady won 7, there was still one for Rodgers, there was still one for Drew Brees, there was still 2 for Manning, and I believe in this conversation.
That's a fair point, Sylvie. That's a fair point.
I still think there's one in here for Josh Allen that he's that great.
That's a totally fair point. But keep in mind, Josh Allen not just having to go through Patrick Mahomes, but he had to go through Lamar Jackson. So
Right.
there's
Burrow,
again,
It's a
and this
fair
is a
bet,
one
is what it
conference,
is. It's
by
a
the
fair
way.
bet.
Yeah, I think it's a good.
It's a fair bet.
a good-
I don't think
it
you
is.
have a
We'll
heavy favorite on either side.
Now this could be
Right.
a 10-year thing. This could be 15 years.
It should be.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys can go to 35 years old, 36 years old. So that's what I said. It's a fun discussion. It'll be they're watching, but there's some young bucks who are in college. Suppose Cam Ward or somebody comes in and all of a sudden is just great with a new team. Caleb. Suppose the coach and the quarterback and everything matches up in Chicago, and you got a guy sitting in the other conference who you got to go through. In addition to, we got to play Cincinnati in the AFC title game.
Mike, where would you put, and I know sometimes that you bristle at this, this conversation, what would you say about what Patrick Mahomes has done? And if he can win 3 in a row, something nobody has ever done, been to the Super Bowl then, 5 times in his career, has been to the AFC Championship game in every year that he's been their starting quarterback. I mean,
No, I don't bristle with that at all.
Where do you place him in terms of?
That's the story. I mean, that's the story. That's the number one story to me the next 2 weeks. It's not the Eagles. I mean, if you're in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, of course it's the Eagles. But for the rest of us, it's can somebody do this 3 straight times? Hasn't been done since the mid-'60s. It hasn't been done in 60 years. Since Bart Starr and Vince Lombardi and that whole cast. And when they won, they did win 3 in a row. People say, you haven't won. Yes, they did. It wasn't called a Super Bowl yet. The first one was barely called a Super Bowl. So the Packers did it. And that's the number one storyline. And if Mahomes and Andy Reid do this, wow. They get to all-time status with more time. Andy Reid could go another 4, 5, 6 years maybe, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see, and Patrick Mahomes at least that long. So now with the salaries people have, although Mahomes is signed to a deal that may actually become friendly with trying to put some players around him. And by the way, they seem to be able to talk about great scouting and development. They seem to be able to come up with people in the draft. They got one of the rookie wideout. So they're the story. They are the story to me. Can the Chiefs do this a third time?
Yeah. We've talked to you and checked in with you like once a month on this topic since the NBA season has started. And we know a lot of the times you're in the Arizona area, so you can watch on NBA League Pass and you don't have to worry about CHSN.
Yeah.
So I asked people based on yesterday's exciting Bulls win upsetting Denver, and Matas played one of his better games. Like, again, I didn't watch, Michael. I can't get it with my antenna.
I thought about you last night, Silvy, because I was able to watch here in Washington.
So I asked, and there's a poll question I put out, and I know how much you love when I sample our fans. Over 6,000 votes have been tabulated in a mere 3 hours. And I asked the question, how much Bulls basketball are you watching? Knowing for the fact that it's hard to get these days. And I gave 4 answers. A lot, a little, I won't watch because you just don't want to, or I can't watch because I can't get the channel. Those are the options. You want the results of this, and then I want you to tell me what you think.
Yes.
41% of the 41.5% of the voters say I can't get the channel. Another 41.5% of the voters say I won't watch them. 13.9% of the voters say I watch a little Bulls basketball, and just 3.1% of our voters say I watch a lot of Bulls basketball.
That's a bad result, a bad look, bad optics, bad managing of the situation by the club and the league. That's just bad. There's nothing good about that. Nothing. Zero. Nothing good comes from those answers. That's too bad. I mean, I watch some. I'm watching the trade market more, trying to figure out what comes from if Vooch gets traded, if Zach gets traded, sort of what happens there. Does it improve them in any tangible way immediately? So I pay attention. And again, if you're out of town, you're able to do that. And it's too bad. I just feel bad that you can't do it. And I don't know. Still, the Bulls suffer from they got to have a draft. And Patrick Williams' name is out there in trade talk, and they just re-signed him. They re-signed him for what? That's a bad judgment. To give Patrick Williams, was it $90 million?
$90 million,
with a player option in year 5.
That's just okay. Let me put a real exclamation point on that. That's really bad managing. You can't look at anything he had done in his time as a young Bulls player, and I know he's hurt for a full season plus, and say he's worth that investment. No chance, none. And so, especially at a time, and you used to be able to sign a player like him and then get good value in the trade market. You can't do that anymore. So it was just bad judgment. But and it's not like Houston and OKC where the Bulls have drafted so well that you can overcome it. And you've got I was just looking at Houston's. We just did a segment on PTI. We're looking at Houston's roster. They have drafted brilliantly, up and down. OKC, brilliantly. Cleveland, maybe even Detroit. Now that Cade Cunningham is playing well. They're over 500. They're a better team than the Bulls. So you have 4 bottom dwellers that have drafted well, developed well, and here they come. And 3 of them are a threat. Cleveland is a threat to win the whole thing. Oklahoma City is the number 1 threat, in my opinion, to win the whole thing. And Houston is now, I don't know how far Houston is off OKC. A year, maybe. And the Bulls, where are they in this? I mean, they're not even worth your time, your investment. That's bad. I'm a lifelong Bulls fanatic. Lifelong.
Me too.
The team was born when I was 7 years old. I've spent my entire life rooting for, watching, agonizing over, celebrating, all of that, the Chicago Bulls basketball franchise. And now I can't even call people in Chicago or text them and say, did you watch? Because then they say, I couldn't get the game.
In their win over the Nuggets last night, they attempted 53 threes.
I don't know what to make of that.
I was going to say, I know I've asked you this in the past, but as the season rolls on, are you still, is the NBA product still appealing to you, Mike?
The NBA product's on the top. I don't want to see the bottom dwellers. Now, the Celtics play that way too, Tommy.
Yes, they lead the league. I think they average 48 threes
and the Bulls are second now, right? The Bulls have gone from a team that didn't shoot nearly enough threes to a team that either is overdoing it or onto something that will help, make them a better team. But I'm not looking at the bottom dwellers for the most part. There's no point. There's too many good teams. I was in Dallas Wednesday night, and I got to see Minnesota, who I think is a team that's going to break out of it now. And Dallas, when they get their MVP back, I think they're going to be in the final analysis of the team. So, yes, I'm fine with the top of the product. I'm not looking at the bottom dwellers. I mean, there's nothing wrong with watching OKC in Houston or the Celtics. And by the way, if the Warriors somehow get Jimmy Butler, and I think that's the place he should wind up. If the Warriors could somehow get Jimmy Butler, and you put Butler out there with Draymond and Steph, I don't know. I mean, do I think they can catch Houston or OKC? No. But they could be really worth watching. So I think the product is worth watching at the top end.
Michael, what would you tell Jimmy, though? What would you tell Jimmy with his behavior?
I don't think the behavior is turning anybody off. Teams know what they're going to get with Jimmy Butler, particularly in April, May, and June. And they know Jimmy's doing this intentionally so he can this is his leverage to force his way out. I think that the smart teams know that. What, the Suns don't know that? They already got a guy who forced his way out, Kevin Durant, out of two places. So I don't think that's a turnoff. As a matter of fact, if anything, Jimmy could be rested for a run in April, May, June if he's on the right team. He's not going to help the Bulls or the Wizards. He's not. But could Jimmy help a serious contender? I think he still could. I'm not saying he's going to put him over the top. I'm saying that if you put him on a team with stars and aspiration, I think they could make a dent and be a threat in the spring. So I don't think that Jimmy Butler missing a team flight is going to make the Warriors or the Suns say, oh, we don't want him now. I mean, come on.
Is this type of behavior more acceptable in the NBA than it is in Major League Baseball or the NFL or other places, the NHL?
There's only two leagues, there's two sports in the world where that type of behavior is the norm, and it's professional basketball and soccer. Those are the two places. And those are the two places also where stars are bigger than teams. That's not the case in the NFL, even with quarterbacks. Stars are bigger than teams in those two sports. And that's why you get, the behavior you get. You get diva behavior in those two sports that seems more outsized than the others. Because one person disproportionately affects the outcome. I mean, Jimmy Butler has led a team to the finals twice in this decade. So that is not the case in the NFL, and it's not the case, God knows it's not the case in baseball, where pitching is, so disproportionately important, and certainly not the case in the other sports. I don't know about the NHL. I think it's a little less in the NHL. It's basketball and soccer. That's where, but we've seen historically that when you add a great player, despite diva behavior, it can work. It has, and it probably will continue.
Great stuff, Michael. We appreciate it. Have a great week, okay?
All right, you guys. Be well.
There he is, Michael Wilbon.